Joseph and Kendra Duggar have officially lost all 4 of their kids. When CPS and local police stepped inside their seemingly perfect home in Tontatown, Arkansas, they discovered a terrifying reality. The bedroom doors where their 4 young children slept were completely altered. The locks were actually installed directly on the outside. Whoever was placed inside those rooms simply could not escape. So, is this just an extreme parenting method, or is it a literal prison designed to hide a predator behind closed doors? To uncover the shocking truth revealed today, I dug deep into the Washington County arrest records, the Florida indictments, and the latest investigative reports. What I finally found is much darker than anyone had ever realized. On March 20th, 2026, the carefully crafted facade of this famous reality television family completely shattered. That is the exact day Kendra Duggar was officially placed in custody. When you look closely at the booking sheet from the Washington County authorities, the charges are absolutely staggering. She was formally charged with 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor and 4 separate counts of second-degree false imprisonment. If you do the math, that is one specific criminal charge for each of her 4 young children. Now, we really need to talk about the terrifying detail that led to these massive charges, because this is the exact discovery that caused the state to step in. When law enforcement officers conducted their sudden raid on the family home in Tontatown, Arkansas, they were not merely looking through digital files or old paperwork. They were physically walking through the house, observing the exact environment where these 4 children lived every single day and night. And then, they walked down the main hallway and noticed the bedroom doors. The investigators quickly discovered that the doorknobs on the children's rooms had been deliberately altered. They were completely reversed. The locking mechanism was installed on the outside of the room. This means the doors could only be locked and unlocked by someone standing in the hallway. If you were a small child inside that bedroom, and that door was shut and clicked locked, you had absolutely no way to open it. You were completely trapped inside your own room, entirely dependent on an adult to let you out. So, what I found was that under Arkansas's state law, second-degree false imprisonment is not just a casual parenting mistake. It legally means a person knowingly restrains another individual without proper authority, interfering substantially with their freedom of movement. When applied to 4 very young kids, locking them in a room where they cannot escape during a sudden emergency, such as a severe house fire or a sudden medical crisis, instantly elevates the situation from a strict household rule to a serious crime. At this point, I started questioning, what kind of parent intentionally reverses a doorknob so their toddler cannot escape? We are talking about helpless kids, with the oldest being just 7 years old and the youngest around 3. Imagine being a toddler, waking up in the dark, feeling scared, and realizing you are physically caged in. But the people defending the family are trying to push a very different narrative. Supporters claim that reversing the locks is just a practical safety measure to prevent toddlers from wandering around the house at night and accidentally getting hurt. Do you buy this safety excuse, or do you think these reversed locks were a deliberate tool for control? Let me know in the comments. Because of that excuse, we have to think deeply about standard legal procedures. Child Protective Services does not just remove 4 children over a simple, well-intentioned safety hack. Typically, if a parent makes a naive mistake, the agency mandates basic parenting classes or gives a stern warning. The harsh reality that this immediately escalated to 8 severe criminal charges against the mother reveals a much darker truth. The authorities did not see a loving attempt at child safety, they saw systematic, intentional confinement. They saw a highly controlled environment designed to keep the most vulnerable members of the house completely silenced and hidden away from the world. The locked doors were not meant to keep external danger out of those rooms. They were clearly designed to keep the children permanently locked in. When you look at the timeline of this case, The rapid collapse of this household is truly shocking. On March 18, 2026, Joseph was taken into police custody. Just 2 days later, on March 20th, authorities returned to arrest Kendra. Suddenly, you have a situation where both the mother and the father are facing severe criminal charges directly related to the safety and welfare of their own children. When both parents are simultaneously pulled into the criminal justice system for endangering minors, the state has absolutely no choice but to step in immediately and take full control now. This brings us to the most heartbreaking part of the entire investigation, which is the fate of the 4 young kids. We are talking about little Garrett, Addison, Brooklyn, and baby Justice. Child Protective Services is legally mandated to intervene when the primary caregivers are deemed a threat. Taking children away from their home is never an easy process, but investigators had to physically remove those 4 kids from that deeply toxic environment. They had to take them out from behind those locked doors and place them somewhere safe, completely isolated from the strict control of their toxic parents. Now, people often confuse the roles of social workers and the police. Child Protective Services mainly focuses on the welfare of the kids, often providing resources or basic parenting classes to keep families together if possible. Which means, the fact that local police and the sheriff department bypassed standard social services and went straight to filing 8 criminal charges against Kendra proves something crucial. It proves the authorities believed these children were in immediate, life-threatening danger. This was not viewed as a simple parenting mistake or a naive error in judgment. It was treated as a serious crime scene. But here is the massive contradiction that has everyone completely baffled today. For years, this family has aggressively sold an image of absolute perfection to the public. If you look at their social media presence, they boast over 500,000 loyal followers. Their online profiles are filled with bright, smiling photos, matching outfits, and long captions about faith, love, and traditional family values. They literally built a very lucrative brand on being the ultimate, wholesome, dedicated parents. So, how do we reconcile that public image with the horrifying reality of what police found hidden inside their private family home? Why would a wealthy couple who spends so much time bragging about their flawless life online leave their own children locked inside cages the moment the cameras stop rolling? The sharp contrast between their carefully curated internet presence and the dark, hidden truth is deeply disturbing. It shows a terrifying level of deception. They desperately wanted the whole world to see a happy, thriving family. Meanwhile, their 4 little ones were trapped behind heavy wooden doors with the locking mechanisms installed on the outside. It honestly makes you wonder how much daily effort went into constantly staging those perfect moments. They likely used those pictures just to distract everyone from the nightmare happening down the hallway. The children were forced to live a dual life, smiling brightly for an audience of 500,000 strangers, only to be sent back to empty rooms they could never leave on their own. This entire situation is a tragic reminder that social media lies. The state removing Garrett, Addison, Brooklyn, and Justice was the only way to finally break them free from that toxic, fake, and incredibly dangerous environment. Now, they are finally somewhere safe, away from those reversed deadbolt locks forever, thankfully. To fully grasp exactly how those reversed bedroom locks were even discovered, we have to step back a few days to March 18, 2026. The authorities did not just randomly show up at that house in Tontitown out of nowhere. They were actually there to execute a major felony arrest warrant for Joseph. But this specific arrest warrant did not originate in Arkansas. It came all the way from Bay County, Florida, and it was tied to a horrifying secret from the year 2020. The entire raid on the Arkansas home was just the fallout from a ticking time bomb that had been waiting to explode for 6 long years. Let me break down exactly what the Florida indictment reveals, because this is where the story takes a deeply disturbing turn. According to the official court documents, The crime took place during a trip to Panama City Beach. The victim in this case was an innocent little girl who was only 9 years old at the time. Joseph, who was a grown man, targeted her in a setting where she should have felt completely safe. He used his position of trust to commit severe crimes against a child. I read through the specific details of the affidavit, and the method he used to hide his horrific actions right out in the open is completely chilling. The police report describes a specific moment where Joseph told the 9-year-old girl to come sit right next to him on a sofa. Once she was seated, he took a large blanket and draped it completely over both of them. He used that blanket as a physical shield to conceal what his hands were doing underneath. He trapped her under that fabric to commit his unspeakable acts without anyone else in the room noticing. And then he expected her to stay quiet forever. But she did not stay quiet. He admitted to it. Yet he walked free for 6 years. Do you think the family tried to cover this up just like they did with Josh? Drop your thoughts below. It obviously took immense courage. But that little girl slowly grew up. Fast forward to recently, the victim, who is now 14 years old, finally found the strength to come forward and tell the authorities everything that happened under that blanket. What happened next is a crucial piece of the puzzle. Armed with her very brave testimony, the father of the victim decided to take direct action. He confronted Joseph about what occurred back in 2020. During this intense confrontation, Joseph did not deny it. He actually confessed. He admitted his crimes to the father of the victim, and later he even admitted it to the law enforcement investigators who were working the case. Despite having a full confession and a brave, cooperating victim, the wheels of the justice system moved incredibly slowly. For 6 whole years, Joseph simply continued to live his normal life. He went on having more children, building his public image, and acting like absolutely nothing happened. He genuinely thought the Florida secret was buried permanently. But that exact confession is what ultimately gave the Florida prosecutors the solid foundation they needed to issue a full felony warrant in 2026. That warrant is the exact reason the police knocked on his door in Arkansas. If he had never committed that crime in Florida, the police would have never stepped inside his house, and no one would have ever found those 4 children trapped behind those reversed doorknobs. While the spotlight has heavily focused on Joseph and his horrifying crimes from Florida, we absolutely have to turn our attention to the other person living inside that house. We need to talk about Kendra. Her role in this entire nightmare is highly controversial, dividing everyone who follows this case. On Friday, March 20th, 2026, she was booked into the Washington County Jail on 8 serious charges. But she did not stay behind bars for long. In fact, she bonded out just a few hours later. The bail amount was set at a surprisingly low $1,470. For a family with vast financial resources, paying that tiny amount of money was incredibly easy. She simply walked right out the door and went back into the free world. Meanwhile, the public debate surrounding her actual level of guilt has completely exploded. To truly understand Kendra, you have to look at how she grew up. She is currently 27 years old, but her life path was decided for her a long time ago. She married Joseph when she was only 19 years old. She was raised in an extremely restrictive environment that demands absolute submission from women. Because of her highly sheltered upbringing, many people argue that she is just another deeply brainwashed victim of a massive, controlling system. They believe she was conditioned from birth to obey her husband without asking any questions, no matter how strange or dangerous his demands might seem. The problem is, she is not just a submissive wife anymore, she is the mother of 4 young children. This is where the sympathy for her completely falls apart for me. This is the part I couldn't get past. She's the mother. Even if you grew up in a strict religion, how do you look at a reversed lock on your child's door and think it's normal? How do you put your toddlers to bed, step out into the hallway, and turn a heavy deadbolt, knowing they are completely trapped inside. At some point, the maternal instinct to protect your own offspring has to override the rigid rules of your religious upbringing. The authorities clearly agree with this perspective, which is exactly why they charged her with 4 counts of false imprisonment and 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor. They do not view her merely as a helpless bystander. Let us look closely at a massive clue hidden in their digital footprint. For years, Joseph and Kendra were incredibly active on their joint Instagram page. They constantly posted smiling pictures, sharing every little detail of their growing family. But then, something highly suspicious happened. In November of 2021, their social media presence abruptly vanished. They completely stopped posting altogether. They went completely dark without any explanation. When you line up that specific timeline, it makes you wonder. Did the dark secret from the 2020 Florida trip finally start whispering its way through the family network? Was November 2021 the exact moment Kendra found out what her husband did to that 9-year-old girl? If she knew the truth about his dangerous tendencies, locking her kids in their rooms makes her a direct accomplice to their daily suffering. Did she participate in building that prison just to protect his public reputation? Let me know if you think she was forced into silence or if she was a willing, active participant in covering up his terrifying crimes. When we closely examine the specific details of what Joseph did in Florida back in 2020, one particular item stands out in a truly terrifying way. He used a simple household blanket to cover his actions while sitting right next to that innocent 9-year-old girl on the sofa. Fast forward to March 2026 in Arkansas, and we see heavy doors with reversed deadbolts trapping 4 young kids inside their own bedrooms. At first glance, a woven blanket and a backwards lock might seem completely unrelated to each other. However, if you dig deeply into the history of how this famous family was raised, a deeply disturbing connection quickly emerges. Both of these items are dark reflections of the exact same system of extreme psychological and physical control. To truly understand this terrifying connection, we have to talk about the Institute in Basic Life Principles, widely known as the IBLP. This is the highly controversial, secretive organization that shaped Joseph's entire childhood and his worldview. One of their most notorious parenting methods is a practice called blanket training. The core concept behind this method is incredibly harsh and deeply upsetting. Parents place an infant, sometimes as young as 6 months old, on a small blanket placed on the floor. The young child is expected to sit completely still. If the baby naturally tries to crawl off the edge of the fabric to explore, they are quickly struck with a flexible ruler or a similar object. The process is repeated over and over again until the baby finally learns that moving beyond the strictly assigned boundary always results in physical pain. The ultimate goal of this practice is to completely break the natural will of the child early on, forcing absolute, unquestioning submission to adult authority. It is a terrifying practice. Because of that, the children raised in this specific environment are deeply conditioned from infancy to stay completely silent and accept whatever harsh treatment they receive from the adults in charge. They are systematically trained to suppress their natural human instincts to flee from danger or fight back against harm. Now, think about the Florida incident once again. Joseph did not just grab any random object to hide his terrible crimes against that 9-year-old victim. He specifically chose a blanket. He utilized an everyday object that, in his twisted world, already symbolized total submission, fear, and enforced silence. He took a terrifying childhood training tool and completely twisted it into a physical shield for his own predatory behavior. It is truly sickening. In other words, the reversed locks found by investigators on those bedroom doors in Tontatown are just the next logical step in this sick ideology. A backwards doorknob is simply a permanent, wooden version of blanket training. Instead of hitting a toddler for crawling off a play mat, You just trap them inside a physical box where they cannot possibly defy your strict orders or escape your grasp. The underlying toxic philosophy remains exactly the same. The adults demand total, unwavering control, and the children are completely stripped of all their personal autonomy. The entire IBLP system teaches vulnerable children that they must be entirely silent and unconditionally obedient, effectively stripping away their ability to set boundaries or say no to authority figures. This extreme power dynamic creates the absolute perfect victims for those who wish to do them harm behind closed doors. Does this prove that the IBLP system breeds predators, or is Joseph solely responsible for his twisted actions? What's your take? When you zoom out and look at the entire Duggar family tree, it is impossible to ignore the massive, dark shadow hanging over this current investigation. We simply cannot talk about Joseph's current legal situation without immediately talking about his older brother Josh. Just a few short years ago, the oldest sibling was sentenced to 12.5 years in federal prison for his own horrific crimes against children. For a long time, the family desperately tried to paint Josh as the sole bad apple. They desperately tried to convince the general public that his deeply disturbing actions were just a rare, isolated tragedy. But now, with Joseph facing severe felony charges for targeting a 9-year-old girl in Florida, that defensive narrative has completely collapsed. The wholesome television image they sold on 19 Kids and Counting is entirely dead and gone forever. They cannot hide behind their famous brand anymore. What struck me here is the terrifying pattern. 2 sons, identical predatory behaviors, and a system designed to protect the men at all costs. You cannot just look at this as 2 brothers who coincidentally made terrible choices. You have to look at the powerful parents who built the environment that allowed these crimes to happen right under their roof. For decades, Jim, Bob, and Michelle constructed a massive public relations machine. Whenever a dark secret threatened their highly profitable empire, their instinct was never to protect the innocent victims. Their primary goal was always to hide the truth and minimize the damage. They wanted to keep the show running no matter what the human cost was. At the same time, they used their immense influence to ensure that no one dared to ask any difficult questions. They silenced anyone who threatened to expose the dangerous reality hiding behind their bright smiles. This brings us to the absolute biggest fear the public has right now regarding this unfolding nightmare. The reason this matters is the incredibly uncertain fate of Joseph and Kendra's 4 young children. Right now, those kids are safely out of that house and away from those reversed locks. But who is going to get permanent custody of them? Jim, Bob, and Michelle are not just regular grandparents, they are wealthy and highly connected individuals. Their estimated net worth sits at around $3.5 million. They have the financial resources to hire the best attorneys and fight aggressively in family court. The terrifying thought, keeping people awake, is that these powerful grandparents will use their millions to legally claim custody, pulling those 4 innocent kids right back into the secretive religious cult that created this nightmare in the first place. This is a truly massive legal custody battle just waiting to happen in the very near future. Just imagine the horror of rescuing those vulnerable toddlers from a locked room, only to hand them over to the very people who built the psychological prison that trapped their parents. If Jim, Bob, and Michelle manage to secure custody, those children will be raised under the exact same toxic rules and forced silence that produced predators in a single generation. It is a cycle of generational trauma that desperately needs to be broken by the legal system right now. The court has a massive decision to make, and the stakes could not be any higher. Do you think the state will permanently block the grandparents from gaining custody due to their dark history of covering up crimes, or will their millions of dollars win in family court? Please tell me exactly what you predict will happen down below in the comments section right now. We have all traveled down a very dark, incredibly twisted, and emotionally exhausting path together today. We carefully started by looking all the way back at a deeply hidden crime that was committed during what seemed like a normal family trip to Florida in the year 2020. From there, we slowly uncovered exactly how that single, long-buried secret eventually led state law enforcement officers straight to a truly terrifying, shocking discovery inside a house in Arkansas just a few short days ago. We watched with horror as a seemingly perfect family home was fully exposed as a literal miniature prison. It was a space carefully and intentionally designed to keep 4 innocent kids completely trapped, powerless, and isolated inside their own bedrooms. It is a profoundly heartbreaking tragedy that completely shatters every single wholesome image this famous television family ever claimed to stand for over the last decade. Throughout this investigation, the one thing that kept haunting me wasn't just the charges, it was the image of those 4 little kids looking at a door they couldn't open. Just take a moment to really imagine being that incredibly small, waking up alone in the middle of the pitch-black night, feeling deeply scared, and suddenly realizing that the heavy wooden door standing securely between you and the rest of the outside world has a solid metal deadbolt permanently installed on the opposite side. You are entirely, physically helpless, forced to just sit there waiting for the exact same adults who built that terrifying cage to finally decide when you are officially allowed to step out into the main hallway again. That profound, daily level of absolute isolation and total physical restriction is truly terrifying for any normal person to even think about. No young child should ever grow up believing a locked cage is completely normal for them. If there is one massive, undeniable lesson we all must take away from this entire ongoing nightmare, it is the cruel and harsh reality of public deception. This specific legal case stands as the absolute most brutal, unforgiving proof that we should never, ever trust the flawless, picture-perfect facades we see constantly presented on our social media platforms every single day. A smiling mother and father posing brightly for the camera with perfectly matching outfits can easily and effectively hide the absolute most sinister secrets the very second the camera lens is finally turned off. We have also learned a very grim, unforgettable lesson about the true dark nature of extreme domestic control. Teaching vulnerable children to practice blind, unquestioning obedience is never, under any circumstances, a sign of high morality or superior religious virtue. Instead, forcing that strict, unnatural silence simply becomes a highly effective tool for unimaginable harm and long-term exploitation. It systematically trains kids to accept their own daily captivity without ever making a single sound or asking a single question. I've laid out the timeline, the reversed locks, and the bizarre contradictions. Now, I want to hear your final verdict. Who do you think should get custody of these 4 kids to keep them truly safe? Should they go to family members outside the religious circle, or should they be placed completely outside the family tree altogether? Please just drop all of your very detailed thoughts in the comments down below right now. Joseph and Kendra are facing the justice system now, and those 4 kids are out of that house. But as we look at the Duggar family tree, you have to wonder, how many other doors are still locked from the outside? Thank you so much for watching this video and joining me on this dark journey. If you found this deep dive insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more investigative true crime cases. I truly appreciate all of your incredible support. Stay safe out there.